Christopher Nolan is taking on the Odyssey, one of the oldest and probably strangest epic in Western literature. And 1 week ago and a few days ago, new promotional pictures were released. And today we will have a look at them and find out what is historically accurate and what is not historically accurate. We will compare them to actual archaeological evidence and depictions of Mycenaeans regarding their fashion and in general what they wore and how, they depicted themselves. By the way, hi, I'm Alena and welcome to Alenative History. On my channel, I mainly focus on ancient Greek history. I actually studied history where I specialized on ancient history pretty early on. I also run a podcast in German where I cover the ancient Greek history from the Bronze Age to the Hellenistic period. And in the first season of my podcast, I covered the whole of Bronze Age, meaning from the early Hellenic cultures to the Mycenaean culture / civilization and its decline. And for that season, especially for the Mycenaeans, I did a lot of research, especially archaeological evidence and excavations, findings, and so on. And therefore, I wanted to look at those pictures and give my humble opinion on them regarding their historical accuracy. But before we dive into the topic and look into the pictures, I just want to give you a quick overview on how I will navigate through this video. First, we just have a quick look and explain very quickly where the Odyssey actually takes place, so the time frame or time period. And then we will have a look at the pictures themselves and compare them to the archaeological evidence / the Mycenaean depictions. And at the end, I will give my final thoughts to the Odyssey and will tell if I will watch the movie or not. So, when does the Odyssey actually take place? Although we don't know yet what time period Nolan's version of the Odyssey will aim for, we just will stick to the original, or where the epic Odyssey takes place, or where scholars actually place it. And that is actually the Mycenaean period, or better said, its end and decline. So as we slide into the sub-Mycenaean period / also the beginning of the Dark Ages. So if we make it more narrow, somewhere between 1200 to 1100 AD BC. There's also actually evidence at the site of Troy that a real conflict took place there, which may have inspired, of course, the Iliad or the Trojan War itself. It's also the era when palace centers like Mycenae, Pylos, and also Thebes existed, but were also facing, especially around at latest 1100 AD BC, facing destruction and to some degree also abandonment. It's still an era where probably powerful kings ruled and a more complex infrastructure and society existed, but was on the verge of declining. But I also read about some theories that suggest that the Odyssey, so the movie itself, takes place at a later period, like the sub-Mycenaean period, maybe the Dark Ages, which is also already the Iron Age of Greece, or even maybe the early Archaic period. But for the purpose of this video, we just assume that Nolan's Odyssey will take place during the Mycenaean era or the late Mycenaean era. So for this video, I made a beautiful Figma file where I put every pictures together, not only the promotional pictures, but also all the Mycenaean pictures. So we can zoom into that and have a closer look. First, we will start with Odysseus himself and his son, an enemy, but he doesn't know it yet. And in general, the depictions of military attire in the movie. And I don't want to dive too deep into it because I think that you don't have to be an historical expert to see that their armor is not historically accurate at all. And I'm not only speaking about the Mycenaean age, I'm also talking about all ancient Greek periods after that. We see a lot of dark armor, almost black armor, which to my knowledge wasn't a thing in the Mycenaean era, especially when we regard that armor was made, if we take it that this is armor, it's made out of copper or bronze, and it's definitely not black or almost black. We see they wear shoulder protections and protections for the forearm. And we see there is a difference because with Telemachus, he has a different kind of style than Odysseus' man here. But you can also see Odysseus' armor is different in style than the others, because this here is much more similar to Telemachus. Nevertheless, we also see from here that they have protections on the legs, and we have a look into it later on, and they wear a short or a shorter skirt, a leather skirt, which on first glance reminds me more also of the later ancient periods regarding military attire. Here we have Antinos, and it seems like it's all leather. The shoulder protections is leather, and here the forearm protection is also leather. And he also has a lot of decorations with gold on the armor itself. But let's first look into the armor, what ancient Mycenaeans actually wore. And here I have my cluster of every or almost every Mycenaean fresco I could find depicting ancient Mycenaean warriors. I also didn't talk about the helmet because in my opinion it was the most discussed topic regarding Odysseus' armor in the last few months, so I don't want to go deep into that because I think it was also already covered a lot. But here let's have a look at the depictions. Here we see the famous tusk helmet ancient Mycenaean warriors wore. We have that here on this depiction and also here. Like you see, there are also other depictions like this here where it's golden, but it's also a recreation. Also regarding the colors, sometimes colors are better preserved and sometimes not. So when we see frescoes, for example, like in here we see the fragments, and here we see the recreation of how the rest of the fresco may have looked like. So this here also the coloring maybe is a recreation and depiction. So this could be of course a tusk helmet or from a different material if we see that it's more yellowish or more golden. Also here you have another kind of armor which also differs from the tusk helmet because this here has horns and probably a tail. I wouldn't say tail, I never thought it would be tail, or a tail maybe out of feathers or horsehair or any other hair on the top of the helmet. And I think that's quite creative. That would be awesome to see a helmet like this. Here we also have reconstructions of tusk helmet on how it may have looked like. So we see those helmets are not historically accurate at all for the Mycenaean era and even for the later periods. We already saw those men here, so we have a closer look at them. I think that's probably one of the more famous and more better preserved depictions of Mycenaean warriors. It's on a so-called Mycenaean crater. We see that they wear at least a shirt, I would say, because I don't know if it's an armor at all or what we consider an armor made out of metal or bronze, copper, whatever. But their body is fully covered until here to the hands. And we see that they also wear a nice little skirt with those little thingies. And they also wear protection on their legs, where I also don't know, or I cannot see myself from the depiction on here, if it's made out of bronze or whatever, or maybe only leather. The same from here. I don't know, or I cannot say, is it only leather or any other fabric where we have multiple layers that also can be already very protective in a conflict or when you go into a fight. You can see that Mycenaeans, or at least those Mycenaean warriors, probably mainly protected themselves with those shields. But look back at the armor. This here is very dark. We see seam here. We can see that also from here. This is a hunter. He also wears protection here, maybe not that dark. Like I explained before, sometimes we can recreate color or guess which color was used. So sometimes it is more correct or maybe even less correct how it originally looked like. This man here also has a protection, or at least maybe it's fashionable or everyday fashion wear. He seems to walk his dog, or maybe he also goes on a hunt or prepares to go on a hunt. And he also wears some kind of tunic The tunic we also saw here. We see here that different color is used. It's not in a war setting, like in the promotional pictures. Here we see a different kind of armor. I don't know which material it may be, so if someone is more versed or does know more about fabrics and material used during Mycenaean culture, please tell me or comment. This here is not dark like in this here, but much lighter, so I guess it's also a different material used here. He doesn't use, like on here, protection for the forearm, because here it also seems it's one shirt. I call it shirt. And here too, and this Mycenaean warrior aims with the spear at the already maybe dead or lying enemy, and he also has a full protection of the whole leg here and the foot. I can only guess which material it is. I don't think it's bronze or copper or anything else. I think it's from a specific kind of fabric, which, like I explained before, can already be protective or can have protective features. But another interesting thing I noticed is that some Mycenaean warriors, like on here and on here, don't wear any upper body protection at all. And this is in general something I remember seeing from the depiction. There is a famous ring where the warriors also don't wear upper body protections. So it can be that some warriors or some men, when they went into battle, they don't wear any protection for the upper body, because a lot of resources have to be used to make upper body protection, of course, and I guess not every warrior / maybe man was able to afford such thing. But at least they wore a protection for their head. But we can see with the enemies, they don't wear any protection at all. Another famous archaeological finding we have regarding full body armor is the Dendra armor, and it is the only fully preserved body armor, especially in that form where it's bronze and it's covering most of the upper body. Probably it was only worn by a few Mycenaean, probably only from the elite class, maybe only kings, or at least high status Mycenaean men that could even afford making such a thing. But it's not something you walk around with in the woods. So yeah. So we see, yes, they wore leg protection. Here I see it's probably inspired by bronze, so that was probably not something they wore during Mycenaean age, but another kind of fabric or maybe leather. They didn't wear forearm protection. At least it had to be connected to all of the upper body clothing, whatever. We saw that, their shoulders were protected, but maybe not in this kind of protection or where it was really an armored protection. This here is probably the more realistic fabric kind of approach, where it is maybe leather that was used. Maybe also here, but this here is also inspired probably by later ancient periods, not even, I think, ancient Greek periods. And decorations on armor was definitely not something used, as we see. Regarding the decoration itself and what they depict, I would have to look into that itself. But a detail I saw was the sword here, and a colleague of mine pointed it out on Instagram. And this here is probably historically accurate. So here we have a few recreations of depictions of the archaeological findings from the different graves of Mycenae, like you can see here. And also here a sword. You can see this is definitely a form that existed in Mycenaean age. So this sword is one of the few historically accurate details, although it's only a details, but I really appreciate it. And also the depictions on Odysseus' sword. I don't know if they had depictions on the hilt. I would have to look into it. But what I know, there is at least one sword I know about where a scenery is depicted on the sword. So maybe sometimes even hilts had depictions on them or / decorations. So this could also be historically accurate. The other thing I noticed was this cup Telemachus holds. And I first thought, yeah, that looks quite Mycenaean or Minoan or Cycladic, whatever Bronze Age Aegean culture you take. But I still wanted to look into it and look, maybe it was inspired by a real cup that was found. And it looked more like a Kylix, or Kylix, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, which is a drinking cup or a form of a drinking cup. The form exactly, I didn't find it because on the photo it doesn't appear that rounded, because we see here that the Kylixes were more round, especially here and here and here and here. But maybe it can also be from the perspective of the camera from which the photo was taken that it doesn't appear rounded. And I looked into a lot of different pottery. I looked into, because here we see pottery depicting late Mycenaean pottery or earlier Mycenaean pottery, because different periods had different kind of styles sometimes. But what we also see, cups and in general pottery and art on pottery can be very, very different. And there's a great variety of depictions regarding art on pottery itself. We see that from animals, from different kind of combinations of forms and decorations, like here the spirals, even plants, or a combination of plants and the forms, whatever. Of course, I still wanted to look if I can find this here on any pottery at all, because from the color, yes, it's possible, and the lines, of course, they happen in a lot of Aegean, Bronze Age Aegean pottery. And the closest I could find was this here, or it appears closest for me to the photo or the Kylix Telemachus holds. So is this a historical accurate depiction of Mycenaean Kylix? Could be, because there are a lot of pottery and a lot of ceramics, so it could be. And maybe this was, I see that this kind of form or art can appear on some kind of Mycenaean pottery. And it doesn't even have to be Mycenaean. Maybe it's any other Aegean culture that exported to Ithaca, where it landed, or any other Mediterranean culture even. Another man we still have to cover, because even though he doesn't wear military attire, but is still interesting regarding costume for us, is him. And I think his name was Ephemius. I was always an Iliad girl and not that much in the Odyssey, so I do not know much of the characters, or at least the main characters, I know them. But he's said to be a former servant of Odysseus, or still is. And you can see what he wears here, a lot of beige. The beige mom era is coming, or is still here. In general, there is a lot of brown and dark worn, no color at all, which I will talk about later. But we can see that he wears kind of everyday clothing. So we had this dog walker here, or maybe a man preparing or going into hunting, because it reminds me kind of like here. So we see that he wears kind of a tunic, a colored tunic in two different colors, and here we see it's kind of a blue and a kind of a yellowish, or maybe beige. Maybe. And here we have it in white, but like I explained before, maybe this had a color, but the recreation or the color was maybe that light that it wasn't preserved very well. So this could have been beige too. But here we also have another depiction of rowers, and those here are the only real fragments that are preserved, and we see that they wear a very light clothing or light colored clothing, maybe beige here too. But it's also kind of a dress or a tunic, but it seems like it's one outfit and no extras. So is this an accurate depiction? He wears beige, of course. The coloring here, or the light is very dark, so maybe it's lighter outside. So this could definitely be a color being worn by ancient Mycenaeans. And we also should not forget that he isn't from an elite class, and oftentimes people from the upper class are depicted on frescoes, and we don't see a lot of servants or people who work on the field. We didn't see any cloaks. Of course, it can be possible that Mycenaeans wore cloaks during the harsh winters or during the colder times. But still, I think this here is a see-through. That is not something Mycenaeans wore from what we can judge from the frescoes. And also they didn't wear any belts from what we saw from the frescoes. We see that it doesn't have to be a two-colored tunic, whatever. Maybe this is something only upper-class Mycenaeans wore. And maybe because here we have rowers, and I suspect those rowers weren't people that belong to the elite class or the upper Mycenaean class, so their clothing was much simpler. So in that kind of sense, it can be possible that Mycenaeans wore something like this, where it's only one color, but we see that there is no see-through thing. It was one cloth or one fabric used. So this is definitely creative liberty taken. But now we dive into the next topic, or the next characters, and that is Penelope and her servant Melantho, I don't know how to pronounce it in English again. In general, the depiction of Mycenaean women, which is definitely a topic I did dive very, very deep into during one episode. So I will only take Penelope and Melantho as representation, because although we have a picture of Athena, as she is a mythological figure, and she can take any shape or form what she likes, and in that sense also can take any clothing, even if it's fantasy clothing she likes, I will not take a review on this here, even though we still can maybe see something comparable on Mycenaean frescoes. What Odysseus he wears is a simple cloth, and I will not comment on it because yeah, he just wears something, and we don't know how Mycenaeans probably dressed just to protect themselves from weather or different climates, whatever. We also have to take into account that not every clothing or kind of clothing is depicted or was depicted by Mycenaeans on their frescoes or any other kind of medium. So let's stay with Penelope and her servant Melantho. So we see that both wear a long dress, and it's just in one color. Also, Penelope wears a belt, but it's a fabric belt and not a leather belt, for example. We also see that Penelope only is covered until here, and her forearms aren't covered at all. But we see that Melantho is covered from shoulders to the hands even. And I think that is a little bit more flowy here. The same with here. And I don't know if this is kind of a necklace or even a cloth. I cannot kind of see it clearly, so I don't know if this is jewelry, my favorite word. So I won't talk about this because I cannot see it very clearly. So we see what they wear, and let's see what Mycenaean women, especially from the elite class, actually wore. So you can see here that I put together a lot of different frescoes from Mycenaean women. And as we see here, I will not only comment on the fashion, but also on the hairstyles. But first, let's go into what Mycenaean women actually wore. We see a lot of different forms, and we see again that a lot of color was worn. Like in here, I think this is called the Mycenaean lady, but I'm not sure. And you can see that she at least wears 3 different colors. Again, we see a lot of seam or whatever it's called. She uses very bright colors, combining yellow with red and even white or beige. And the same here, another Mycenaean lady, she also wears dark red. Here we see here on the seam that it's decorated. So sometimes the seam can be decorated or have much more decoration. We can also see this from here. Sometimes we have a lot more fragments here. So here, this is a lot of recreation and interpretation of how the rest of this relatively big fresco may have looked like. You can also see that it's sometimes not one cloth. This seems to be separated. So we have kind of a shirt or upper body tunic, and then we have a layered long skirt with different colors, different decorations, different shapes on them, and so on, and maybe also different fabrics. We can also see another kind of fabric. She's sometimes also called a goddess, I think, and you can see that there are different shapes again and different decorations. It's much more light here. This one is very interesting. She's also sometimes described as a goddess or maybe priestess. She only is covered on here and she isn't covered on here. So one shoulder is uncovered, which is quite interesting. And it seems like, at least from the upper body, that only one color was used and no decorations, whatever. This here, the lyre player, and I don't know if it's a woman or a man, to be honest. I think it's a woman. She also has a completely different attire, in my opinion. It differs a lot from the other Mycenaean ladies. So it could be that she's also from a different social class. Maybe she's a servant, but she still wears the multi-layered skirt, the upper body cloth, or at least it seems like it's almost one dress. But this here still is very different and in one color, it seems, or maybe it has some other color in it. And here is another interesting depiction. These are two Mycenaean ladies on a chariot. Like you can see, we have only this fragment, and this is the reconstruction, and this is a completely new interpretation. So we don't know if there are two Mycenaean ladies on a chariot, but at least one. And they seem to wear only a dress, which is colored in one color, except for the seam again, which is very simple compared to the other decorations here and here. So is this historically accurate? It is accurate that sometimes Mycenaean ladies probably wore dresses that only had one color, but still had decorated seam or some kind of seam at least, because it appears that dresses or clothing women wore also were very colorful and at least wore two different colors, especially for elite women, to which Penelope belongs to. I cannot speak for the servants, of course. Maybe they wore simpler dresses, but what definitely wasn't like a cut like this. We don't see it from any depiction. We see, of course, they were covered until here, so this is kind of correct. We don't see that they wore belts, even though sometimes skirt and shirt or blouse were separated. It doesn't appear to me, at least, as a belt. Maybe you see it differently, but the belt does have, if they have a belt, have a very similar color to the skirt or the blouse they wore on the upper body. This, and also the skirt, if we take that this is maybe a skirt, is not accurate at all. If it is a dress, it is accurate to some degree, because this kind of cut we do not even find in the later ancient Greek periods. This is not a cut they wore during ancient Greece. Not at all. In general, this is a costume, a very creative take, maybe inspired by some ancient periods, not even Greek, but maybe also other cultures. And if we take this as the jewelry, whatever, we see when they wore something on their neck, and if it was jewelry or something else, they didn't cover their neck. So this is not historically accurate at all, and a very creative take. And regarding Melanto, this here could be possible. I mean, we saw that Mycenaean women, maybe even servants, didn't cover all their arms or didn't cover the whole arm. So this is also probably not accurate, but we don't have a lot of depictions of servants or maybe non-elite or non-noble women. Of course, it can be accurate that her dress is in only one color, like we saw before. You have to use a lot of resources to color your clothing at all. So it can be possible that people from simpler backgrounds or from a lower social hierarchy weren't able to afford having their dresses or tunics in multiple colors. Still, we dive into Athena, or Zendaya is said to be depicting Athena. A dress like this, a very light dress, can be possible, because also, as we saw from the depictions of priestesses or maybe goddesses, they wore different kind of clothing, even showing more skin or showing different style of clothing, like we saw here. Like here, the priestess, she wears, it seems like, only one cloth in one color, and she doesn't cover her shoulder. And also this here, maybe this is also, of course there's color in there, but it's more light compared to the other tunics, or also this depiction here. I still think it's a creative approach or a creative choice of clothing, but at the end she seems to be a goddess, so I won't judge that hard on clothing, on what a goddess chooses to clothe as. And also the covering in general, the only head covering we have is from this year. Sometimes goddesses or even priestess probably wore some kind of head. Maybe it's a ceremonial head. We also know these depictions from the Minoan culture. They have that too, even on figurines. And if you wonder what this is, I took this fragment here because it said that it depicts women, Mycenaean women, who sit in a house. But you cannot make out a lot of clothing or any details, so I ignored it. But yes, I still wanted to include it. When Mycenaean wore something, they wore their hair long. We have a head here too, so this could be another form of head and head covering Mycenaean ladies used. But back to the hairstyles. Like you see here, Mycenaean ladies, or Mycenaean women from elite classes at least, they wore their hair dark and long and in elaborate hairstyles. Like on here, another depiction we have is here, and another possibility we see they wear a lot of hairbands to create and decorate their hair, and it was very flowy and long. And if we take this recreation of depiction as a real representation of Mycenaean hairstyles for women, we see that it's possible to also wear it more open, so because they don't have any headbands in their upper hair, but headbands on their lower hair. Do we see that here? Not at all. So the hairstyle Penelope wears is probably, or yeah, it's not accurate at all, judging from the depictions we have. So for me, this would be historically inaccurate. Total no, it's a more modern interpretation, because styles like these, where it's in the back and they maybe have braids on here, or the hair is braided up, comes in the much later ancient Greek periods, and sometimes even not in the form like these. Same here. She seems to have her hair put together, all of her hair back there, and it's not something we see from the Mycenaean period. And as we're speaking of hairstyles, what about the male hairstyles? I mean, Telemachus, he has some nice curls here, and curls are something Mycenaean men definitely have, like this soldier here who is dying, or this soldier. So this would be probably the closest what maybe especially young Mycenaean warriors or men wore: shorter or medium length curled hair. Short hair like this, we don't see it. Also interesting is that Mycenaean men were always depicted as clean shaven. So this is more accurate, and this is also more accurate. That hair even to some extent being more wavy or curly. I mean, some of them were straight or more straight. Okay, this is a reconstruction. But if we take this, it's curly or wavy. And we don't see hair here, but it looks also kind of wavy. And here, he doesn't have hair at all. Oh god. But you get what I mean. I mean, there definitely or could have been Mycenaeans who had more straight hairs than others. There are different hair textures that existed in ancient Greek societies. We see people from having very curly hair to having very straight hair. So yes, it could be, but like this kind of hair or hairstyle wasn't worn. Because this is also very important to know, longer hair, especially during the later ancient Greek periods, so long after the Bronze Age periods, was worn more by elite men or men from a specific social class, because in some regard, like having long or longer hair was considered the sign of a free man, at least for Spartans, or it is one of the explanations. Sometimes it also has another symbolism. So it's not always the same reason for different city-states to why they wore longer hair. Some also wore shorter hair, of course, but it's quite curly too, or wavy at least. But from what we get from depictions of Mycenaean men and even Minoan men, more Minoan men, they wore long hair. Maybe Mycenaeans had a different approach from the depictions I have from men. They seem to at least have hair until the shoulders, some longer, some maybe even shorter. So of course, shorter hair definitely did happen for some Mycenaean men. And the beard, I mean, maybe sometimes men, older men especially, weren't depicted at all. Can be possible. I read a comic named Age of Bronze, where the author tries to represent the Mycenaean culture based on archaeological evidence and what we know of Mycenaean age, and he does it pretty well in my opinion. So if you want to read a comic or any form of art depicting historically accurate, or at least trying to historically accurately portray the Trojan War, then read Age of Bronze. I really can recommend it, because here we see, of course, men wearing a beard. So I don't have a problem with that, because you don't want to shave yourself every day. Some men have more, some men have less. So if you have a beard, I think you do not do yourself any favors if you try to shave it, because it can cause irritations. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, I almost forgot it, was the throne here. And it reminded me of the only throne I could remember seeing from the, maybe not Mycenaean age, but at least the Minoan. I mean, it is suspected that there was a kind of throne room in the palaces, and probably therefore there was also a seat reserved for the king, the Vanax, or the leader of its people. And the only throne I found was this here. And this throne was found in Crete. And you can see, I mean, the shape is different, of course. There are no decorations on here, which doesn't need to mean anything in my opinion, because if there were decorations, they could, if they are not that deep like on here, they could vanish over time or erode over time. Because from grave stelas we can see that decorations were made on stone. So you can see that this was definitely something that was possible to make. And also seeing here some soldiers with different colored armor, which is quite interesting. So is this throne accurate? This part here could be accurate from what I see, but I cannot see the whole throne. Maybe also forms from thrones can be differing depending on palace, whatever. Yeah, can be possible. And the depiction itself, of course, it can be that thrones are decorated. I don't know if this motif was on any other kind of medium used by Mycenaeans to depict something. So I think in general, I mean, it seems to be inspired by Minoan thrones at least, or even Mycenaean thrones that probably may have been used. But this is, to my knowledge and from what I can see and what we know from archaeological findings, a creative approach and probably not historically accurate. So from what we see from the promotional pictures, there are actually more historical inaccuracies than accuracies, especially if we compare them to the archaeological evidence we have about the Mycenaean culture and period. But what are my final thoughts on the Odyssey, and will I watch the movie or not? Now, look, I love historical accuracy. I really appreciate it. And therefore, I also appreciate small details like the sword and even the cup that Telemachus holds. I really would love to have a movie or even a series that tried to bring back the Mycenaean or Minoan world to life with at least maybe 80% accuracy. That would be nice. And I truly believe that people would actually love it, because that would be something people haven't seen before. And I mentioned the comic Age of Bronze before, which depicts the Trojan War in an historical accurate setting, and I truly, truly appreciate it. And I know other people who love this comic, and where you can see that you can tell a great story with historical accuracy. But still, it doesn't mean that a movie has to be a documentary to be meaningful. Sometimes creative storytelling transcends historical accuracy. Troy, for example, has plenty of inaccuracy, but I still love that movie because some of the scenes are absolutely iconic.
Is there no one else? Hector!
Some of the dialogue is unforgettable.
How many cousins have you killed? How many sons and fathers and brothers and husbands? How many, brave Achilles?
I also was very skeptical about The Return, which only came out recently or last year around this time, also depicting the Odyssey, or better said, the last part of the Odyssey when Odysseus returns to Ithaca. And it takes a very artistic, unconventional approach. And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. It was very bold, or it's very bold, especially visually, how the scenes were filmed, even the dialogue itself. And it's just different. And I'm always here for that because I love movies that are daring, and especially those that sometimes take a more artistic approach, especially how they tell stories. I had to cry in that movie. So when I cry, it's typically a good sign. At least it's a positive sign for the movie, that it's not shitty or bad. And then, of course, there's Alexander, a movie I will defend until the last breath I take. It wasn't perfect, of course, but Oliver Stone dared to make a serious historical movie that actually engaged with the complexities of the ancient world, especially during this time period where various cultures of the ancient world in that part of the world clashed. And that's very rare. Of course, he didn't play safe, and I respect that, and I get the critics, but still, he's one of the few directors that did a lot, that is one of the top 10 of people, in my opinion, and from what all the movies I saw, is in the top 10 of people who made one of the most historically accurate movies compared to all the others. And the same goes, of course, for Ridley Scott with Gladiator. In a time when historical movies were out of fashion, he made a very epic movie that brought the genre back to life. And this goes also, of course, with other genres, like when we take Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, George Lucas with Star Wars, Ridley Scott again with Alien. And today, we don't need anything to be Hollywood-esque. And there is not one way to tell stories like maybe we are used to from most, not all, but most of Hollywood movies. Filmmakers and movies from all over the place, from all over the world, prove it every year. Movies from South Korea, China, France, Sweden, and so on, making movies that are a hit globally, even though they are not told from what we are used to from Hollywood. They have their own distinct styles, and they still work, and they still find an audience in every country in the world. And all those movies, especially those I mentioned before, they happened because there was one person, or maybe more people, of course, that said, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. And people responded, and the audience loved it. So will I watch Nolan's Odyssey? To be honest, I don't really know. Because as I said before, I was very skeptical of The Return and said I didn't want to watch it. And I still did because I had time and I liked it. I haven't seen a Nolan movie for a long time now. And I'm definitely not hopping on the hype train or the hate train right now, because both trains are definitely happening. So we have both sides of the spectrum. But I will definitely go into it with a more open mind, because I can understand if you take creative liberties, and I can appreciate creative approaches in general to storytelling, even if it's historic movies and historical events, especially if those are taking place in a culture or time period that is very important to me. Because at the end of the day, of course, You don't need a perfect accuracy to tell a great story, in my opinion. But when you combine great storytelling with attention to historical depth and historical accuracy, like I said before, maybe 80%, that movie would be timeless. And I would totally watch it. And because, as we saw from recent examples, not maybe in movies, but from shows, we saw that historical accuracy can be totally appreciated and a great story can still be told, like Shogun or Rome. Still one of my favorite series, although I'm not really into ancient Rome, but still one of the best series ever made. So if someone ever dares to make a movie that truly or almost truly accurately depicts Mycenaean culture and the era itself, and not a fantasy, not a stylized Hollywood version, but the real deal, I will definitely be the first in line, because we've never seen that, and I think it's about time that we will have that. But what are your thoughts? Will you watch the Odyssey? And how important is historical accuracy to you regarding movies and series?